Hello all and welcome to Great Deltan. Today I'm going to be giving you a full in-depth tour of the layout and everything associated with it. This will also serve as an update for where I've got to with the layout since the last video regarding the motorway construction. For all of the new followers of this channel, this will also serve as a general overview of where everything is on the layout and how it's all set up. So, firstly, a bit of history about the layout and myself. My name is Dan, I am a shift engineer at an automated bakery and I started modelling N-gauge back in 2019 when I made the decision to sell all of my 00 gauge collection to embark on a future with N-gauge due to, like many other people, a lack of space. The original Great Deltan was built in a Yardmaster 10 foot by 8 by foot shed on the plot of my static home which I used to live in. The YouTube channel was started shortly afterwards, after being inspired by the likes of New Junction, Everard Junction and various others to start my own channel. That layout progressed 3/4 of the way through with a highly popular and detailed station. However, in 2021 when we had the opportunity to move into a house, we did, and the layout came apart. We moved into this current house which I am renting, which also came with a garage, so I thought I'd make the most of the space while I had it and build a large layout within the garage space. So the layout itself is housed within a single brick skein garage which measures roughly 5 metres by 2.5 metres. It's primarily based on the southern west coast main line with many features either a copy of or based loosely from areas of the Northampton section of the line. It is a fixed layout which does not break apart, and one day it will come apart eventually when we move out. With the housing market in its current state and with new builds including very little spare room, I'm not sure that I'd ever be able to build a layout of this size again. So although one day it will come apart, I'll be glad that I took advantage of this opportunity when it was available. And there is the garage. So onto the actual garage now, and we'll first talk about the power and lighting. When we first moved in, the only light in this garage was an energy-saving halogen fitting on the ceiling, and the lighting was incredibly poor. The lighting seen now isn't how it originally was when I first installed the lights. Originally there were 7 LED strip lights hanging all around the layout facing down from shelving brackets. The problem with this was that I found the only light was from above, and it cast a lot of shadows to the underside of the trains, and the chassis and the weathering wasn't particularly visible in any videos or photos. So I decided to reposition them to give some additional lighting to the sides of things, which has made a noticeable improvement to the quality of video. So now we have 2 ceiling lights, and then we have 4 around the edge facing outwards and 1 at the back just lighting under that shelf there, providing some downlight. So it's all fairly well spread now and everything's quite well lit. Right, on to the baseboard construction. The bracing and the framework is all made from these softwood planks, which I have acquired from various hardware stores. As it's quite cheap, it's also very readily available and easy to work with. The boards are a mixture of 12mm ply around the scenic areas and some MDF on the scenic break over there. These uprights are screwed directly into the mortar with some wall plugs, and they provide a lot of the support. There is then a cross beam at the back, and then we've got some bracing coming forward. These cross beams at the front, some legs to support the front, and it's all levelled off as much as possible. So it's a fairly simple baseboard structure, but it works well, and I've stood on it many times, so it's ample for what I need. Underneath the baseboard is all the shelving which I have built, which I shall come to in a minute, and that is all built in a similar way with the cross bracing and the boards. As for power, when I originally moved into the garage, there was just the 1 socket on the wall over here, which was ample for what I need, but it was just a bit far away from everything. So being an electrician, I've pretty much wired this entire baseboard as a giant extension lead. We've got a few spurs and double sockets and single sockets spaced strategically around the layout to provide enough power distribution. I wanted it so that I was able to reach every single piece of track with my soldering iron, which has a 1 metre cord, without using an extension lead. So it is rather handy, and then the entire layout just wires into this plug, which is then plugged into the mains. So moving our attention under the baseboards now, I wanted to build the baseboards so that all the stuff I needed to store in the garage could fit like a Tetris puzzle. So all the shelves and all of the spaces are specifically designed to fit certain things. That gap in the end perfectly fits that ladder. This is my modelling shelf. Underneath that I have placed it at a height which fits the miter saw and the air compressor without any space wasted. Although it looks like a bit of a chaotic mess, everything on there is usable and everything I know where it is, so it's an organised mess. Under here is another gap for my music amp, guitar amp, which I used to have, which I had sold, but that's a good place for the air conditioner to go now. In that drawer is all the stock storage, which I will go through when I get round to it. Moving round, we have some various bits and pieces which I have to store. Over here is my workbench, which I use for spray painting. In this drawer I have all of my paints and weathering powders. It's under there at the minute for ease to make the most of the floor space, but every time I need to use it I can just pull it out. It drags out quite easily. Over here we've got more various power tool storage, and the most important tool, Henry. It's always good having a decent hoover. And then more rubbish that I need to store on the shelves down there. And then right at the end I need the tumble dryer, which sits under the layout. It's a condenser dryer, so I don't have any issues with humidity or condensation in here, but it was just an agreement I had with the wife when I built the layout. Up on that shelf up there are all of my train boxes. That shelf is made from a bit of scrap wood and a door which we took off our cupboard inside, and it fits perfectly across the room, and it just keeps all the boxes fairly safe and off the layout, as they were all just sitting in that corner before I built the shelf, using up space. On to stock storage now. You'll notice that I have some bits and pieces lying about on the layout. These bits of stock I need to build storage trays for. I'll just move the camera over here, point it downwards. You'll see what's inside these drawers. I've still got child locks on from when these were inside. So I've got all the stock organised into wooden storage trays which I've built. In the top drawer we've got various accessories like all the light bars which I need to fit into the pendolinos. I've got some decoders for the various pre-orders I have, and then there's also some blanking plates, some tacky wax, and some more Dapol light bars in that drawer. In these two drawers it's just stock which has been readily organised into these storage trays. These I make out of some softwood planks from B&Q and some 6mm MDF board. They're all just glued together, and the wood is roughly the height of the carriage, which is handy. And then there's some more bits in the bottom there. Plenty of room, as I do have a fair bit of stuff on order. Control of the layout. For this I use a DigiKeys DR5000 as it works for me. For the train control itself I use this Pico handset, and for the programming I use the Z21 app on my iPad. I've only got two outputs on this DR5000, being the main bus wire and this programming track here, as that's all I really need. This bus wire runs the entire length of the layout all the way around the front of the baseboard as far as I need it, and that is where all the dropper wires for the track are attached to. While I'm also over here I'll talk about the layout lighting. I have one 12V DC power supply here, and that at the moment only does the buffer lights there, the lampposts for the station drop off, and there are two signals over the far end of the layout which I will talk about when we get to it, but this will supply a lot more when the station build takes place. And I have two of these 12V DC supplies. The other one is over the other end of the layout for the go-karting track and provides the layout lighting for that area. The back scenes are by Gauge Master. They are actually 00 gauge back scenes, but I find that they work quite well for N gauges themselves, and the way I do my scenics, they blend rather well into the foreground. So I've got 3 or 4 different back scenes. We've got the rural area here, and then a more urban area on the left hand side of the layout where the station will be. Sorry, that chair's in the way a bit. But they do blend in with the scene quite well, and they are all stuck onto some 6mm MDF with some back seam paste by Dulux, and then they're all just screwed onto the upright beams. Onto the track plan. All of the track on this layout is Pecco Code 80 Flexi track, apart from the point work, which is only on the inner 2 loops. There are no set track pieces on this layout, and the only 2 wooden sleeper bits over there are the non-scenic section and the point work. So the outer 2 loops are the high-speed lines, as based on the West Coast Main Line. These loops are completely isolated from each other and the rest of the layout. They are just 2 independent loops for high-speed running. I wanted these to be stress-free lines with no derailing or uncoupling by having any sharp corners or point work. So I mainly use these for Pendolinos, HSTs and whatnot. The inner 2 loops are the slow lines for the freight and regional services. They are not completely isolated from each other. They're connected by one set of points just on the station throat, and they too are just broad radius, quite stress-free running, easy loops. There are 2 bay platforms at the station, and they are the only sidings I have in this layout. I am not really one for complex track plans. I prefer just to crank up the trains and watch them go round rather than do any shunting or have much operation. So this layout works for me and what I wanted to achieve with my running. We're finally onto the actual layout itself now, and we will start with this boring area at the back. I don't have a fiddle yard because I have been used to just loading and unloading stock on the layout for the last few years. Fiddle yards are also expensive. They take up a lot of space, which restricts your layout space if you want it all on one level like me, and there's a lot of point work in there, and I just find it a bit too stressful to make. So I just have this area at the back which is non-scenic, an area which is nothing's going to get in the way, for which I can unload and load the trains onto the layout for running. As I said, everything lives in my stock drawer, so whenever I want to run it, I've just got this scenic free area with no obstructions, nothing's going to get broken, and this area is also where I have my programming track and my DC test track, and also gathers a lot of stuff as it's the closest board to the door, so if I want to just drop things in the garage, they end up living on there for a while, but I tidied it today. Next we move over to the countryside cutting, which was the first area of the layout that was completed. This area is based loosely off road cutting in Northamptonshire, just north of Road, where the Northampton Loop Line and the West Coast Main Line meet into 4 tracks again. The area is built using the Metcalfe retaining wall kits. These have been weathered down to replicate the dirtied wall that is at road cutting, as it has been there for some time during the days of steam and grimy diesels. And then I'm just going to take the camera off the tripod for a sec. And then this birdcage structure is built with I-beams, which are just plastic I bought from the local model shop. They have been darkened down, and I have weathered one side. I need to weather the other side. The cool trick about this area is the forced perspective. From this angle, it looks like the tracks follow the cutting, but in reality they go through the wall on both sides to hide the unrealistic curves, and so I could get more cutting on the layout. But from most angles and most perspectives, it looks like trains just fade into that cutting and then follow the more realistic curve that the cutting follows. The next scene we have is the M1 motorway. This bridge is modelled off a real bridge that does go over the M1. The only difference being, in real life, the bridge is only carrying 2 tracks of the Northampton Loop Line, whereas I have modelled this bridge to take all 4 tracks of the West Coast Main Line over the M1. The scene itself is modelled at a time when the M1 was going under the smart motorway roadworks, hence all the cones and the temporary speed restriction signs. But it just added a bit more detail to the model, as it's quite a boring scene without all of that, just cars and road. So now we move around to the main focal point of the layout, which is the go-karting track. Originally in this scene it was just going to be plain, there was going to be maybe a field or a farm, but I wanted to do a bit more than that, so I put a poll out on my Facebook page to ask what people would like to see in this area, and the overwhelming response was a go-karting track. And I was happy with that because that's what I wanted to model really. I just wasn't sure how well that would fit into this area. I haven't really seen them be modelled before, so there's not a lot available out there. Most of the bits on this section of the layout are 3D printed from 3D Rag & Works, such as the go-karts themselves and all of the tyre strips which line the outside of the track. They're all 3D prints. The whole area is lit up with LED lighting, which is all from this plug down here, which you can't see, and that plugs in here. And of course, the actual go-karts themselves move with the help of magna round. So we've got a DC speed controller here, and I can just crank that up and let the go-karts moving. The go-karting track, the two tracks, or the two sets of tracks part ways, and they go into two pairs for the rest of the layout into these tunnel portals here. Originally I was going to stick a village on top of this area, but I eventually decided just to have another scenic break because it's quite a short area from that tunnel portal to that tunnel portal, and to make the transition between rural and urban areas would have been quite difficult in such a short space. So it just seemed easier to have a scenic break there, and then what I've got is two completely separate scenes on the same railway. Over here we have the only two signals on the layout at the minute. These are working signals, and they run off an infrared sensor which is placed about half a foot after the signal. Once they read the train over, they go through a timing process which changes the light from green to red to amber, as you'll see in a minute when this 153 passes over. The signals themselves are by Gauge Master, and the electronic PCBs which control the timers are by Heathcote Electrical, and I got this idea from Pride Parkway, who used these signals on his original loft layout. Trains re-emerge from out of that scenic break. The plan I have for this area at the minute is an industrial estate. I don't really have any other major ideas at the minute, but an industrial estate is quite a modern thing which I can stick in. It gives me a chance to scratch build some household name shops, and it will be quite a good area for detailing as well. Plus you'll always find railway trucks moving through an industrial area. So then over here we have this drop down area. We will have a road coming under here, and there should be a roundabout here with 3 turn-offs. One of these turn-offs will go to the station up this ramp, and these bridges will just be a couple of girder bridges, and that will be done probably next year. So now we can move on to talking about the station. Right, hopefully this will be the main focal point of the layout when it's all finished. I plan on building a large mainline station here. It's still in the early stages right now, having just done the platforms and station drop-off area. This still needs a little bit more detail and some weathering, as it's looking a little bit too clean at the minute. I'll just talk you through the plan for the station. This is loosely based off a mixture of Wolverton and and Northampton station. The two sets of curved lines coming through here roughly follow the same plan as Wolverton, and then at the end they S-bend over to the right, as seen in many train spotting videos. The addition of these 2 bay platforms is a decision I wanted because I quite like having a lot of platforms, and 2 extra bays allows me to put these buffer stops in and have the extra detail there. The 2 longest platforms are able to fit about 13 coaches in, which is ample for what my desire was of fitting an 11 coach Pendolino in. The 2 shorter platforms here are for regional services. They can fit an 8-car London Midland 350 in, and the same with these platforms here, which are just about the same length. So I've got plenty to play with there. The platforms are built using Pico concrete edging, and then the infill is a mixture of wood and polyfiller. I've sanded it all down to make it nice and flat. I find that's the easiest way to make curved platforms fit to the track as snug as possible. The tops of the platforms are then mixtures of scale model scenery, decorative cards, some vinyl strips for the yellow lines, and then these platform edges and tactile paving. Those are all stuck down with some rocket car glue, and it gives quite a good effect, although I found that quite a lot of the vinyl lines have either shrunk or are peeling away, so that's something I'm going to have to look at before I progress with the station any further. So on to the actual plans for what I have coming next. There will be a road bridge over here. This will be very similar to Northampton Station, and then there will be a big building over a lot of this lot, and that will be in the same design as Northampton Station. I'll just show you a picture of how that looks now. So that's going to be a lot of scratch building in 3D printing with the assistance of 3D Wagon Works. The road will come over here, there will be a road entrance here and a bus stop, and then the station building will be here. There will be footbridges down to this level, this level and this level, and then we shall have some identical canopies on all 4 platforms, which will be scratch built and they should be lit, and I'm hoping that they're going to look even better than my original Mark 1 station, which was highly popular, and I got a lot of praise for how I built the canopies on those. So there is a lot in store for this station. At the ends we'll just have a mixture of lampposts, bench, boards, advertisements, flower beds, just general details. At the back here will just be a bit of overgrowth. And then that is more or less how I plan on finishing this layout once I also build this road coming down to the roundabout. This layout was never going to last me a lifetime. I don't plan on being this house forever. It's a rental house. Eventually we will buy a house, but like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm making the most of the space while I have it, because I don't know if I'm ever going to have the opportunity to do this again, and this is what I've always wanted to build, a layout and a station this big. Now before I leave you with some running shots, there are a couple more things I would like to talk about, and the first one of those is the stock. Now, as said at the beginning of the video, this layout is very heavily based on the Southern West Coast Main Line, so a lot of the stock you'll see is West Coast Main Line, especially the passenger stuff. However, Rule 1 applies, and I tend to buy what I like the look of, so there are some things which run in different regions and in different eras to my modern era. Over there is the original Caledonian Sleeper, which I have got in the ScotRail purple stripe livery. The Mark 2s I did as a respray myself, and then the Mark 3s are by Dapple. Over there we've got the Pretendolino set by Dapple, which I have hand weathered and added lighting and passengers to. In here we have a selection of diesels and electric locomotives for the freight. Here we have the Auto Ballaster train. I don't know how often that would run through the Northampton area of the West Coast Main Line, but I do like the wagons, and I like to have them top and tailed by a pair of Kohler 66s. There is the Virgin Trains Loco hauled Mark III set in the red and black livery, as was first introduced in the initial privatisation of the West Coast Main Line, when Virgin Trains won the bid to run that franchise. There we have the new measurement train. That's the Gauge Master set with 3 resprays by AOX models on eBay. That set has had everything done to it, DCC fitting, light bars which have been dimmed to a nicer level. It's got some staff in it, and it's been weathered by West Coast Models. They do a lot of my weathering. They have also done a couple of my locos, and they do outstanding jobs. So I try to send things there as and when I can, but if it's simple things like Mark III coaches or DVTs, I'll do them myself because there's not a great deal of weathering to them. In that set, just before the 321, we have a 350, which is a standout option you must have when running any West Coast Main Line layout. And then we have the Silverlink 321. I did previously have a 321 in London Midland livery, but I sold that, and one day I might plan to buy it back. Something you'll know about me is my stock never seems to stay the same for very long. I'm always buying and selling. However, at this point, I'm pretty sure this is all staying. I don't plan on selling anything anymore, but I'm also not buying a great deal either. Over there in that box we have the KUA nuclear flasks and 2 of the Graham Farris DRS Mark IIs to complement that. Over the back there we've just got some more locos for various things, although it does say 350s on the box. It's not there. And then we've got all the bits in front which need storage trays building for them, like the IPAs. Pendolinos, of course, are a standout option when having a West Coast Mainline layout. In there is a Transpacific Express Class 68, which is awaiting the Mark 5s. which should be on the way. And there we have my Caledonian Sleeper Mark 5 rake, which, as we know, have had some issues. I'm able to run all 16 coaches with 2 Graham Farish 66s on the front. I've recently bought a Class 86 in Caledonian Sleeper livery, which seems to be quite heavy. So when the new Dapol 87s come out, I shall get another one of those, and hopefully I'll be able to double head that train. There's no chance a Revolution 92 will be able to haul those, which is a bit disappointing, but at the same time the amount of detail on these coaches and features does make up for it a little bit. We've got 2 more Pendolinos there in the Ghost livery and the Virgin Flown Silk, and then another one in the Avanti partial livery, and that more or less makes up the stock. And then there's a couple more bits in the bottom in that storage tray. We've got a set of MEAs to go with the new EWS Class 59 when Revolution trains bring those locos out, and then we've got some DB Schinker MMAs by Revolution and the TEA tankers as well. As for freight, I sort of just buy whatever looks nice. I don't really know a great deal about freight or what runs on the West Coast main line, so I don't want to study it, I just buy it. Of course you're thinking there should be a container train in here. Well, I did have a container train at one point, but that went in the last sort of sell-off I had. So one day I may purchase another container train. As for the equipment used for my filming, I use a Sony FDR AX53. I used to use an iPad mini back in the day of my original layout. However, I had quite a few issues with the lighting interfering in the video quality, and the zoom wasn't all that good. So this camera has 30x optical zoom, it's got 4K capabilities. It was about £700, but you won't pay anything less than that for a decent camcorder. This is nowhere near top of the range, but it's enough for what I want to do. As for my video editing software, I use Movavi. I used to use iMovie as it all came with the iPad, but then I wanted to pay for some better software with 4K capabilities and just a few more features. As you can tell, the zoom on this camera is rather good. So that'll be it from me. Thank you for watching. I hope this video has been very helpful in informing you the layout of this railway, where I'm up to with things, and just a general tour. I'm going to leave you with a few running shots of various bits of stock, as it's been quite a while since I've had a good running session. And then we will be back again, hopefully in a couple of months, with the newest area of the layout, which will be focusing on the industrial estate. I've started the station drop-off area, but that's as far as I'm going to get with the station for now. If there's anything in this video that I haven't covered and you would like to ask me, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer it the best way I can. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye bye.